Tonight, still no answer to what killed Michael Jackson after police interview the doctor who was with him when he died, as new details emerge about his eccentric life. I'm Chip Reed. Also tonight, a coup in Central America. The military ousts the Honduran president and sends him into exile. Neighboring nations are threatening to attack. Despite a surge in violence, the U.S. ambassador to Iraq tells us the Iraqi military is prepared to take charge when American troops pull out of Iraqi cities. And this week, sentencing day for Ponzi thief Bernard Madoff, and his victims will have their say.
I just want him to hear how he's ruined and destroyed my life.
This is the CBS Evening News with Russ Mitchell.
Good evening. Russ is off tonight. We begin with new details on the investigation of the death of Michael Jackson. Police have interviewed the singer's live-in doctor about Jackson's last moments, and the family requested and received an independent autopsy. More now from Ben Tracy in Los Angeles. Ben?
Chip, still no official word from the Jackson family compound here near Los Angeles about funeral arrangements for Michael Jackson, but we have learned some new details about the final moments of his life. An attorney for the doctor who was with Jackson at the time says that the superstar was found in bed with a pulse before he died. Now, as more and more details emerge about the life and death of Michael Jackson, they are becoming increasingly strange. Michael Jackson's family remains mostly out of sight at their suburban Los Angeles home, where a makeshift shrine to the megastar is growing.
We're here because, we love them and we'd like to express that in some way, and this is the only way we know how.
Meanwhile, investigators say Dr. Conrad Murray, who was with the singer during his final moments, provided useful information during 3 hours of questioning Saturday. Murray was hired to tend to Jackson during his planned summer concerts in London. Today, the doctor's lawyer says he did not inject Michael Jackson with the painkiller Demerol on the day he died. But many questions still remain. How much medication was Michael Jackson taking? And did a reliance on painkillers contribute to his death? One-time spiritual advisor Deepak Chopra says in 2005, Jackson asked him for a prescription.
And he showed me a little bottle of OxyContin. I started to probe and then got to find out that he was probably seeing several doctors who were giving him narcotics.
Attorney Thomas Mesereau, who represented Jackson during his 2005 molestation trial, says even after being acquitted, Michael Jackson was never quite the same.
He was not constructed, in my opinion, emotionally for a trial like that.
However, Mesereau says Jackson was a devoted father who worried about what would happen to his kids if he died prematurely. An ever-increasing number of Jackson associates want to care for the children. Jackson's longtime nanny, Grace Wawarmba, considers herself the children's mother. She is quoted in the Times of London saying Jackson abused prescription drugs and she had to pump his stomach several times. She is also quoted saying that just hours after Jackson died, his mother, Catherine, called her and said, "You remember Michael used to hide cash at the house. I am here. Where can it be?"
If Grace's goal was to recreate herself from nanny to celebrity, then, bravo, job well done. But if she had hoped to maintain a relationship with Michael Jackson's children, then that was a pretty stupid move.
Now, we're told that the Reverend Al Sharpton is actually on his way to Los Angeles right now to meet with the Jackson family about potential memorial plans. Those could include simultaneous worldwide celebrations of Michael Jackson's life. Chip.
Thank you, Ben. In Central America, the military in Honduras staged a coup today, and fast-moving events threatened to explode in the region. Troops took the president into custody and sent him into exile. Kimberly Dozier has the latest. Kimberly?
Good evening, Chip. President Obama today called for a peaceful resolution to the political crisis in Honduras. And a U.S. official this evening says that the White House still considers President Manuel Zelaya the duly elected leader of that country.
Honduran troops faced off with angry but so far peaceful demonstrators after the Army's dawn arrest and expulsion of President Manuel Zelaya.
Momento histórico en la historia.
Now exiled to nearby Costa Rica, President Zelaya says troops grabbed him out of bed, beat his bodyguards, and arrested him in his undershirt. His supporters are calling it a coup to prevent him from holding a constitutional referendum today. He says it would have made the government answer more fairly to the people by installing a one-man, one-vote system. His critics say it was about allowing him to run for a second term. The vote had been condemned by the Honduran Congress and the country's Supreme Court. They're backing the military, and one of Zelaya's main congressional critics has been tapped to replace him. The Organization of American States condemned the ouster at an emergency meeting in Washington today, but no one is calling for military intervention, including the Honduran representative, a Zelaya supporter.
We're a nonviolent people. We believe strongly in nonviolent means of a political struggle.
But Venezuelan President Hugo Chavez is threatening to invade after Honduran troops temporarily detained ambassadors from his country, Nicaragua, and Cuba.
Chavez usually does not follow through with such threats, and thus far, other than the verbal condemnation, we're not seeing a lot of international momentum towards some sort of intervention. Chip?
Thank you, Kimberly. Turning to Iraq, it's moving week for the U.S. military. On Tuesday, American forces will pull back from cities, leaving security there to Iraqi forces. Lara Logan reports from Baghdad that things are not quiet as departure day approaches.
These are the first moments of chaos following a massive bomb blast inside a Baghdad market last week, captured on amateur video. It is a scene of utter devastation. At least 78 people were killed as they shopped for the evening meal. This just one incident in a week of attacks that's left more than 250 people dead. The worst violence in more than a year here. Iraq's prime minister appealed for national unity, even as he celebrated the withdrawal of U.S. combat troops from Iraqi cities and towns. Maliki has made no secret of his delight that from June 30th, just 2 days away, U.S. forces will mostly be confined to bases outside of urban areas. In the countryside, they can still operate as normal. But under the security agreement the U.S. made with Maliki's government, American troops will need Iraqi permission to enter the cities. Today in Baghdad, terrorists took advantage of the bad weather to target a U.S. convoy, one of their last opportunities to strike at American troops before they mostly disappear from the city streets. The attack left 6 Iraqis wounded. Civilian casualties one reason many Iraqis are glad to see the U.S. go. But the violence leading up to the June 30 deadline has raised doubt in the minds of many here, fearful of what will follow the U.S. withdrawal.
Exactly how the agreement will work is still somewhat unclear to the forces who have to abide by it. Or as a senior U.S. officer told me, there's still a lot of gray area. Lara Logan, CBS News, Baghdad.
Joining me now for more on the U.S.'s new role in Iraq, we turn to the U.S. Ambassador in Baghdad, Christopher Hill. Welcome, Mr. Ambassador.
Thank you very much.
We just heard from Lara Logan that the violence in Iraq is the worst it's been in more than a year. Is moving the troops out of Iraqi cities an irreversible decision, or could they be going back in?
Well, first of all, there has been violence in Iraq lately, but I think if you look at the overall trends, not just look at it comparing one day to another, but overall trends, you see that violence in this year, 2009, is considerably less. And what we're doing really with this move is to comply with our obligations of the security agreement that we reached with the Iraqis. We think we are certainly ready to make this move, and most importantly, we believe the Iraqi forces are ready to take over this mission.
But what would it take, sir, if the violence does continue to get worse? Is there any possibility that U.S. troops could be going back in?
You know, in addition to being the world's greatest fighting force, I'd say American forces have also become the world's greatest trainer. And they've been working very hard with the Iraqis to make sure the Iraqis can take up this mission. So we have every confidence that they'll be able to do so. So I don't think there's any need to speculate on what happens if things get rough. We know that things will be difficult at times, but I think we are really ready to move forward on this.
Some analysts worry that with the U.S. troops moving out of the Iraqi cities, there will be a power vacuum, and that vacuum could be filled by forces loyal to Iran. Is that something that concerns you?
Well, again, if there were a power vacuum, that would suggest the Iraqi forces are not ready for the mission. In our judgment, they are ready, and they're looking forward to taking on the missions.
U.S. Ambassador to Iraq, Christopher Hill in Baghdad, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, how many years does swindler Bernie Madoff deserve? Victims have their say. When he faces judgment tomorrow, swindler Bernard Madoff will hear how much of the rest of his life he will spend behind bars. He will also get an earful. Randall Pinkston got an idea of what those victims will say.
Sharon Lissauer is getting a chance to do something most of Bernard Madoff's 8,000 victims can't. She is one of the few selected to speak at the swindler's sentencing tomorrow.
I just want him to hear how he's ruined and destroyed my life.
Lissauer says she was wiped out. The savings from her modeling career, plus money her mother left her, were all invested with Madoff last November, just 6 weeks before his Ponzi scheme collapsed.
Everyone had so much trust in him, and he betrayed everyone.
Lissauer will be one of hundreds of victims expected to jam a federal courthouse when a judge imposes a sentence for what's described as the largest investment fraud case in history. Last week, a federal judge ordered Madoff to forfeit over $170 billion in assets, which essentially means all of his property. And his wife, Ruth, was ordered to give up $80 million of her assets, still leaving her with $2.5 million. Madoff's lawyers say a humane sentence would be 12 years in prison. Federal prosecutors are recommending 150.
I would like to see him get a lifetime imprisonment and not in one of the fancy country club jails.
Rose and Jack Less, aged 89 and 92, say they invested every penny of their savings, including profits from the sale of their business and home, with Madoff. Now all of it, $800,000, is gone.
We started to sell our furniture, some of our things that we value, so that we should have some money immediately.
What makes the Lesses case more difficult is that the Securities Investor Protection Corporation, the agency charged with compensating victims who lost money, is using a formula for restitution that will give the Lesses nothing because they've withdrawn money over the years. It's a formula that many say is unfair to the oldest of Madoff's victims.
They were victimized, obviously, by Madoff, and now seemingly they are victimized again by the SIPC trustee and essentially the SEC, too.
Some of Madoff's clients say they don't really care about his sentence. They just want their money back. All claims must be filed with SIPC by Thursday. Chip?
Thank you very much, Randall. The new Transformers Alien Robots sequel has racked up the second biggest five-day opening ever at the box office. Transformers Revenge of the Fallen took in more than $200 million. Only The Dark Knight did better. You may not know the name, but you'll certainly recognize the face and voice. TV pitchman Billy Mays died today. He was found unresponsive in his Tampa home. Mays made a career out of hawking products like Kaboom and OxyClean. Yesterday, Mays was on a plane that made a rough landing in Tampa.
Things from the ceiling start dropping, and it hit me on the head, but I got a hard hit, so.
There's no clear indication the injury contributed to his death. Billy Mays was 50, and we'll be back in a moment. Iranian riot police used tear gas and clubs to disperse an estimated 3,000 demonstrators in North Tehran today, the first major protest in 5 days. Iranian musicians and artists in this country are expressing their anger over what's happening the best way they know how. Here's Seth Doan.
What do we want? Justice!
A show of solidarity by candlelight,
Justice!
On canvas, and in concert. 6,000 miles from the demonstrations and street protests in Tehran, activists and artists in New York City seemed to find their voice this week, as many inside Iran were quieted. Iranian-American Johnny Azari attended this vigil and planned his own late-night tribute.
The feeling of powerlessness really is just overwhelming.
What he could do was bring together several bands to raise awareness.
We wrote a song for the people of Iran.
Debuting an anthem about the Green Movement, the signature color of opposition leader Mir Hussein Mousavi. In the audience, his dad, Shoja Azari, an artist exiled from Iran in the early 80s. His work is part of a contemporary art exhibition which just opened at the Chelsea Art Museum. And it's truly contemporary, last updated at 2 a.m. the night before the show. It incorporates images from YouTube of the protests and violence in Iran.
Fortunately, the regime cannot really cut all the communication because of the technology and the internet.
From digital artwork to this on a drum. Here, Shiva Ahmadi paints her commentary on the political power of oil. In Iran, she was forced to self-censor.
It was very frustrating. You're an artist, you put your heart there, you're doing what you believe in, but then you never get to show them.
But here, through September, is the chance for 56 artists to show their work. 35 of them still live in Iran, where their art is considered subversive.
The main idea behind the show was to really defy stereotypical perceptions that the people have of a country like Iran.
Till Felroth is co-curator of this exhibit, originally planned to mark the 30th anniversary of the revolution in Iran.
None of us are able to go to Tehran right now and be on the street demonstrating, but I feel through our work what we can do here to raise awareness, provide a platform for people to speak out.
A platform and a voice that many inside Iran are still hoping to find. Seth Jones, CBS News, New York.
That is the CBS Evening News. Later on CBS, 60 Minutes. Thanks for joining us this Sunday evening. For Russ Mitchell, I'm Chip Reed, CBS News in New York. Katie Couric will be right here tomorrow night. Good night.